Over 2 years ago, air tanker pilot Ken Lancaster was fatally injured when the engine quit in his personal Verieze experimental home-built aircraft following some extensive maintenance that he had performed on the ignition system of that aircraft. We didn't know the cause of the fatal crash for all this time until now that the NTSB final report is out. Let's check it out. This video is brought to you by the folks that sponsor this channel here on Patreon. Thank you for your support. This report serves as a cautionary tale to all of us who do our own work on our own aircraft, especially if you are not a certified aircraft mechanic. The aircraft that Ken was flying at the time of the accident was his Rutan Verieze experimental aircraft. It was built in 1993, had a total of 668 hours on the airplane at the time of the accident. The Verieze was a revolutionary Burt Rutan design from the 1970s where a builder could build a very efficient home-built aircraft using foam and epoxy construction. The typical Verieze, and I believe this was the case in Ken's aircraft, was normally powered by a Continental 0200 engine with a pusher propeller, usually of composite or wood construction design, two-seat tandem arrangement, and the nose gear retracted like you see on this airplane right here, such that on the ground the nose would sit on the ground, and there's no starter in the Verieze. In order to save weight, you would simply hand prop the aircraft to start it. Ken had been flying for CAL FIRE since 2016 and started out in the OV-10 and was at the time flying the S2T tankers out of Colombia. Before that, he was an Air Force veteran, a 10 pilot. On to the NTSB final report. In the analysis, the pilot had been performing maintenance on the airplane and upgrading various systems. The accident flight was the first flight out of maintenance. So he was doing his own work on his own airplane. And it does not sound like he had a A&P or an AI or another set of eyes helping him check his work before he test flew it. According to radar and NTSB data, the airplane departed and the pilot executed several maneuvers before returning to the runway. The airplane then made a high-speed pass over the airport. This is Columbia Airport, the home base of the air tankers, reversed course, and approached the runway again. After a second high-speed pass over the runway, the airplane joined the traffic pattern for landing. As the airplane turned on final approach, it was about 680 feet above ground level and the airspeed was about 70 knots. Over the next 24 seconds, it descended toward the terrain at an airspeed of about 66 knots, coming to a rest about 1/2 mile short of the runway. Post-accident examinations revealed no problem with the flight control systems and no catastrophic issues with the engine itself, the mechanical part of the engine. Damage to the propeller suggested that the engine was not operating at the time of impact, and the close proximity of the accident site to the runway surface suggested that the engine had quit. The exact fuel quantity at impact couldn't be determined, but they believed there was sufficient fuel for the flight. Now, during recent maintenance, the pilot modified the airplane to a dual ignition system. Now, the airplane always had a dual ignition system. It had a dual magneto ignition system. But he replaced one of the magnetos with an electronic ignition system. Now, this is something that's fairly common in light aircraft design and was pretty popular at the time. Generally, light aircraft operate with two magnetos to fire two sets of spark plugs in each cylinder. Magnetos are preferred because they are their own independent source of power to make the spark for the spark plugs. Electronic ignition is a trend that folks were getting on board with because electronic ignition provides a variable ignition timing, a more efficient use of the spark throughout the power setting of the engine. A magneto is just bolted onto the back of the engine and sets the spark at a set number of degrees before top dead center every time. Most mags on a 0200, I believe the timing is 25 degrees before top dead center. But the big problem with an electronic ignition is that it requires 12 volts in order to make the spark for the electronic ignition to work. So most folks like to add one electronic ignition, replace one magneto with an electronic ignition, and keep the remaining magneto for its redundant reliability, providing its own power to produce a spark, so that in the event that the electronic ignition fails, the magneto will still continue to operate. Or in the event of total loss of electrical power, the 12 volts, the electronic ignition will fail unless it's got a battery backup, but the magneto will continue to operate. So he replaced one magneto with an electronic ignition system. The remaining magneto was improperly wired to the ignition, rendering it inoperable unless the keyed ignition switch was set to the both position. More on that in a minute. This would have made it impossible for the pilot to verify that both ignition systems were operable during the run-up unless the electronic switch was activated and was operable, which could not be definitively determined. Disassembly of the magneto, the one remaining magneto, revealed fine carbon dust and a worn distributor brush, which could have impaired its performance. The electronic ignition system that he was installing was the electro-air ignition system, and this was the first flight following that installation. The last annual inspection, or they call them condition inspection on experimental aircraft, which can be performed by an A&P mechanic, as opposed to a certified aircraft where you need to have an AI or authorized inspector inspect a certified aircraft. The last annual inspection was recorded as being completed in October 6 of 2021 at a total airframe time of 676.4 hours with 701.4 hours on the engine since time of last overhaul. During the last inspection, the mechanic noted that both magnetos needed to be replaced and were overdue for a 500-hour inspection. Additionally, the carburetor had reached its maximum time between overhauls in excess of 10 years. Now, this is an experimental aircraft versus a certified aircraft, but you really should follow the certified guidelines for experimental aircraft. So it makes sense that he would want to go ahead and replace one of the magnetos with an electronic ignition at this time. Now on to the details about what they found out about the installation of the electronic ignition by the pilot. The ignition system was configured with the electro-air electronic ignition routed to the top set of spark plugs and the original left magneto to the bottom set of spark plugs. Remember, there's two sets of spark plugs in each cylinder in an aircraft, and in the O200, one mag fires the top set of plug wires and the other magneto fires the bottom set of plug wires. Investigators confirmed that they were both timed correctly. The magneto was operated by the keyed ignition, that would be the original keyed ignition switch in the airplane, and the electronic ignition was operated by a separate single-pole, single-throw switch, which he had to add to the system. Following the crash, investigators found that the magneto switch was in the off position, which might make sense as that's part of the typical, if you're committed to a forced landing, you're going to turn the master and mags off, but they found the master switch that turns electricity onto the airplane into the on position, and the position of the electronic ignition could not be confirmed. But here's the big problem with the installation. The magneto had two P leads connected. P leads, primary leads. Each magneto has a single primary lead. The primary lead is what grounds the magneto, grounds the primary winding of the magneto, and thus shuts off the spark. So the magneto is always hot until which time that you ground the magneto, and you ground the magneto with the ignition switch via the P leads or primary leads. Both wires were routed to the keyed ignition switch, one attached to right and one attached to left. This would result in the magneto not being able to operate in three positions now. You would be grounding the magneto in either the off, right, or left position. Only in the both position would the magneto, the one remaining magneto, be ungrounded and operational. This would have made it impossible for the pilot to verify that both ignition systems were operable during the run-up. Well, here's what they're talking about. Very simple system. Each magneto has a primary lead that goes to the ignition switch, and the ignition switch is what grounds out the magneto and shuts it down. If you take the lead from the right magneto here and add it to the left magneto and leave it all wired up to the ignition switch, now you're going to ground the remaining magneto in either the off, right, or left position. The only way that one magneto is going to continue to operate is in the both position. You're not supposed to take the lead from the magneto that you're replacing and move it over to the remaining magneto. You just need to get rid of that wire altogether. Because remember how an ignition switch operates. In both, the mags are ungrounded and they're both hot. In the left position, the right mag is grounded and the left mag is operational. In the right position, just the opposite. And of course, off grounds both magnetos. Then they took a closer look at the electronic ignition, and they found that the wire from the coil pack to the bus, bundle number 3, 10 amp, was separated at the butt splice, but not properly crimped on one side, the barrel not depressed on one side. The wire was also chafed where it had been routed along the fuel lines, and the wire strand had wires that were deformed on one side and then bent back under the adjacent wires, consistent with the wires being pulled out of a crimped connection and reinserted at an unknown time. So yeah, you try to crimp the wires together, it doesn't work, you pull it apart and you jam it back in there again and try to crimp it. Although there was evidence of a prior loose wire connection, the wire strand was consistent with having a sufficiently tight connection before separation. Now, they're having a little bit of trouble. Did this wire come apart before the engine failed, or did some of this wiring fail upon impact? The wire from the controller to the bus bundle number 4 3 amp connection had a tighter crimp and had sliding contact marks through the crimp barrel that was consistent with it making contact despite the crimp not being secured on both sides. 2 wires in the strand had been cut and several others had substantial scraping damage next to the insulator cut. So this sort of wire damage, as you can see here, move this over, was caused during the installation. And finally, disassembly of the magneto, remember it was beyond its 500-hour lifetime, revealed a fine carbon dust in the housing and the distributor brush was worn, both consistent with extensive wear. So based on the evidence of the installation of the electronic ignition made by the pilot and his first flight after this installation, it's more than likely that one of these wires came apart on the electronic ignition, rendering that set of spark plugs inoperable, forcing the engine to continue to fly on the one remaining tired old magneto. And with the way that the P-leads were wired on that magneto switch, had the pilot instinctively gone to troubleshoot the remaining magneto by switching from left to right on the magneto switch, the moment the pilot moved the ignition switch from both to either left or right, that magneto would have stopped firing and the engine would have quit. Being a Verieze with a 0200 engine and a light wooden or carbon fiber propeller on it, and a high compression pistons, that engine is going to quit very suddenly. The prop is going to quit turning very suddenly, and with no starter on board the Verieze, which is standard, there's no way to restart that engine at that low of an altitude, and you are committed to a dead stick landing. And unfortunately, the terrain around the Columbia Airport is not conducive towards a forced landing, especially short of runway 17, lots of rocks and trees. Experimental aircraft offers a great degree of freedom in general aviation, and as stated here on the EAA page, that the maintenance work on experimental aircraft can be performed by virtually anyone regardless of their credentials, but let common sense be your guide as to what maintenance you want to conduct yourself. However, an experimental aircraft still requires an annual condition inspection that needs to be signed off by an authorized airframe and power plant mechanic. Unless, of course, you built the aircraft yourself, then you do have the repairman certificate for that one airframe and that one airframe only, but that was not the case in this particular accident. The first thing I did after high school was got my A&P license, and it's one of the smartest moves I ever made in my aviation career, as it allows me to do a lot of my own maintenance on my aircraft, but more importantly, I've learned my limitations in my ability to perform maintenance on my aircraft, and that's why I always take my aircraft to an authorized inspector to get, well, I'm required to for an annual inspection, but I always want to have another set of eyes checking my work before I take off in the aircraft, especially after work that I have performed on my aircraft. I like to use CRM or crew resource management in the maintenance of my aircraft. I want another set of eyes working with me on the aircraft while I'm doing my work on the aircraft. And experimental aircraft, the Experimental Aircraft Association, usually at most airports, there's a strong network of EAA builders with some very senior guys with a lot of experience. They may not have their mechanics license, but they have a lot of experience in building and maintaining these aircraft, and it's always a good idea to get in touch with that group of pilots and stay in touch with them and have those people oversee your work on your experimental aircraft. Because doing your own work on your own aircraft without any oversight, without anybody looking over your shoulder and checking your work, can lead to devastating consequences. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.